Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to today's webinar. I think we have a great topic and some esteemed hosts. And the topic today is AI, and rules engines in healthcare, improving decisions and patient outcomes. So if you're dialing in from like the UK or Singapore, you might want to pass on this one. You might be a bit shocked at how the US healthcare system works between payers and providers. But if not, then I think you'll learn a lot today from our hosts. And also, it's an exciting time with the advancements in AI, and we're all trying to figure out how we can take what's good, apply it to the healthcare system, and make that better for everyone: patients, payers, providers. And to talk about this today, we have a great panel. Let me introduce you to my co-host today. First, I'd like to introduce Beth Meyers. Beth is an assistant professor at the University of Minnesota. She's a nurse. She's an Army veteran. She's had experience, on the floor with patients. She also has a PhD in health informatics. So very well-rounded background and experience. Welcome, Beth. I'd also like to introduce you to Krish Purushothaman. Krish is the Vice President and Practice Head of Implementations and Services and RPA at CitiusTech. Welcome, Krish. And myself, I'm the Chief Operating Officer. I'm Gordon Jones. I'm the Chief Operating Officer at Decisions. Not quite as educated as my colleagues, but I've been with Decisions 7 years. I was a customer prior to that. And we should have an interesting conversation today. First, some housekeeping. We have some upcoming training events, live training events on the Decisions platform. Mid-September, we just had an event last week, in fact, in Denver. Coming up mid-September at our headquarters in Virginia Beach, we have a 3-day training event where you'll learn all about the Decisions platform. And then mid-October, we will be back in Singapore for our Asia Pacific client base. We also have several webinars that are applicable here. You can, or rather white papers, I should say. Our white papers are on our website at decisions.com/white papers. We have an automating AI white paper. We have another white paper on the Decisions platform and HL7 and using FHIR. I'll talk a bit later about why that's so important in terms of integrating with all of the various systems in healthcare. There's tons of them. I think Beth had once told me that the average hospital, I think, has something like 5,000 software applications. So there's all kinds of things that need to be integrated. HL7 and FHIR are core to that. Krish, tell us about the upcoming events that CitiusTech has.
Great, thanks, Gordon. As industry is moving towards Gen AI, and we, as a company, CitiusTech, focused on healthcare, doing a lot of investments in Gen AI space. And we have a couple of webinars coming up. One in August, Gen AI in Action, where we see the real world scenarios on healthcare transformation initiatives. We see a lot of customers come to us asking for, can we do a POC in the Gen AI space? So we can help solving those problems through POC, which turn into actual actions. And also we have another webinar coming up on connected care. And apart from these two webinars in August, there are plenty of events. We specialize in healthcare, so a lot of healthcare events that is being conducted from CitiusTech standpoint, which is available citiustech.com/events. Feel free to register and there are a lot of exciting events coming up there.
All right, thanks, Krish. Did you want to talk a bit also, Krish, about CitiusTech itself?
Sure, definitely, Gordon. So CitiusTech, we primarily focus on healthcare consulting IT. So pretty much we do only business with healthcare. When I say healthcare, healthcare within our company includes life sciences and medtech devices as well. So we are IT consulting leader in this space just because our niche skills, we, like I said, we focus only on healthcare, and then we are backed by two major private equity companies, Bain Capital and then BPEA. And any major healthcare payer provider or medtech companies or even life sciences space, any major companies that you have, we have some form of presence in that, helping our customers in seeing value through our IT consulting. So what that means is, like, from a CitiusTech standpoint, if you go to the next slide, Gordon, please. So we are organized by four verticals. That brings in focus on payer, provider, medtech, and life sciences. And our offerings are spread across, pretty much IT consulting and advisory services. And especially, decisions is something that falls under implementation services, which I head the implementation services focusing on low code and RPA.
All right. Thanks, Krish. Now for a bit about Decisions. Decisions is a no-code process automation platform with a rule engine, flow engine. There's 5 pieces to our platform. I won't spend too much time talking about the various 5 pieces, but predominantly we're involved in decision automation. And the rule engine is the heart of the platform. And the whole idea here is to take business logic out of custom code, out of stored procedures, and put it in a place that can be easily understood by, I'll say, users or subject matter experts, such that they can understand the decisioning, the rules, and perhaps even edit and maintain those rules. So we do a lot of work in medical claims processing, in the insurance industry in general, as well as verticals like loan origination. Additionally, we sit beside the large platforms like SAP, like the healthcare platforms, and we manage special processes, special decision automation, where you have a process where you don't want to custom code your large transaction system, but rather offload the logic, the customization to a platform like Decisions. And finally, what I'd say is Decisions, where we call ourselves an orchestration engine. So we sit between the cracks, like, for example, in healthcare, we sit between the cracks of a lot of other software applications to integrate, to add business logic in between, to allow for that full automation when it sits between the cracks. So I've had CTOs tell me, "Hey, I have all my big bricks. What I need is something in between to manage integrations and automation," and that's really where Decisions sits. But to really understand the platform, I'd highly recommend, if you're interested, to reach out for a demo, custom demo. You can find Decisions at sales@decisions.com, or reach out to info@citiustech.com to talk to the healthcare experts and technologists at CitiusTech. If during this webinar, if you have any questions, by all means, at the bottom of your screen, you'll find a little chat window or a Q&A window. We'll be answering those throughout, or certainly at the end. So today's agenda, we could start with, there'll be a few questions we'll walk through, the need for AI in healthcare. What are the exciting things happening today? Then we'll discuss, why having a rules engine is important, an AI-enabled, AI-powered rules engine, and how AI and rules can work together to both improve outcomes and to provide automation in our very, very manual healthcare space as it is today. Then we're going to talk a bit about optimizing, revenue cycle management and the claims processing using these tools. At that point, we will turn it over to Tim Stahl, who leads our sales engineering team here at Decisions and has a live AI-enabled demo to show you how that can work within a claims management system. And then we'll end with some Q&A and some final discussion. So with that, let's go ahead and get started in the discussion. So I have a couple questions for our esteemed panel here. So to begin, maybe we'll start off a question for Beth. Beth, what are the trends, emerging technologies, and predictions for healthcare digital transformation that you see coming in the market today?
Thanks, Gordon. I am happy to be back speaking with you and Decisions customers, first of all. And I think that AI is one of those top emerging trends in healthcare today. We know from our analysts that AI is on the top of the hype cycle for healthcare. And if you attended HIMSS, which is the largest health informatics society within healthcare, the conference last year, all the booths were filled with AI. And we're thinking, just as every other industry, how can we incorporate AI into healthcare? And when I think about AI in healthcare, I think about probabilities versus certainty. And so I'm excited to have some discussion today about how the rules engine can help with AI and providing some trust and assurances for using this AI in high stake settings like in healthcare. Talk a little bit about my background. I really think AI is one of those leading areas for the emerging trends in healthcare in general. Krish, what are your thoughts about that?
So with respect to digital transformation, I have a couple of areas that we are observing where the industry is trending towards more of telehealth expansion. We see that, kicked up real fast, like after the COVID era. And, from digital transformation perspective, like we can bring in a lot of, we can reduce a lot of burdens on the healthcare facilities by, enabling more providers into getting into telehealth consultation. And then the other area that we are seeing is where really AI coming to place value-based healthcare. And there is a shift recently we are seeing from fee-for-service to value-based care models that focus on patient outcomes and the cost effectiveness, right? We know that every year healthcare cost is skyrocketing, and then obviously there is a constant pressure from the plans. How do we reduce the cost effectiveness? And that's where we think, that's where we see that digital transformation efforts would help reduce the cost. One such area that we are seeing is the population health management. So we have the data available for the members, like the clinical data and the claim data. There is a wide group of people needing care, where we can, kind of identify them in using the predictive modeling and then try to get them into an engagement of more of taking, timely care and things like that. So we can definitely reduce the cost. So those are a couple of areas where digital transformation, especially the technology of AI and then Gen AI coming up, is going to help transforming the healthcare industry.
I'm glad you mentioned that. I'll have to remember to pull in some AI. I'm teaching a population health informatics course this fall, and we talk a lot about how to wrangle that data, and AI is a great tool to wrangle that data.
Right. And then and there is another thing that I forgot to mention is about the interoperability, right? When it comes to the care coordination, that is another area, right, where we have common standards that Gordon talked about, the HL7, right? That is really key. We, like you were also mentioning, like 5,000 systems in a major health, delivery system that you could see, like they have to talk to each other, not only internally, but also talk to plans and different providers where, this coordination of care becomes a crucial thing. So that is another area where technology can really influence and bring in, seamless interoperability across the providers, where it leads to a better patient outcomes, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I'll just have one last comment, Gordon, and I'll let you move us on. But that um, it shocks me every time when I hear stories about paper still in healthcare. So before we even get into AI, we have to complete this digital transformation of getting the entire everything automated within healthcare. So we need to get the data into an electronic format, and then that format needs to be standardized by adopting those HL7 standards. Um, and interesting enough, there's a group called BPM Health Plus who has joined HL7 in the last year to standardize the rules we use for quality. So we can provide some standardization, not only on the data side and the interoperability side, but also in the rules that we're using to make sure that we're getting the best care for our entire population. So there's a lot of exciting things happening in that digital transformation space, Gordon.
Yeah, and actually, you bring up a great point, Beth, in that, I think we've all been amazed at the power of these large language models. If you think back, to a year ago, March, I think GPT-4 was released. And I mean, myself, I use it every day, doing this and that or the other thing. Um, but it actually, if you look at over the last year, how much real automation has taken place, I would say it's fairly small, right? We've just now seen the fruits of a lot of labor in figuring out how do you best apply this in automation, right? And you bring up a great point with the paper, and I think that's actually one area where there's a great use case here. We've all asked questions of these models, and we've all seen the hallucinations, but there's something called retrieval augmented generation, or RAG for short, where the model is really only used as a query tool against a specific healthcare policy, against a specific document, right? And you're asking questions of the LLM against a document. So I think this generative AI has the great capability of taking a lot of shortcutting the conversion of paper-based documents and digitizing them, because it's actually very good at pulling information out of documents and putting it in a digital format and categorizing it and putting the right JSON structure, the right data structure, such that it can then be part of a digital automation process. So I just want to point out that this RAG capability is using the LLMs more as a query tool or as a series of SQL statements rather than asking the model what to do. So I think we're all learning how best to apply it, and this is where I'm seeing the best results to date. Anything to add, Krish, before we move on?
One thing, if I may add here, so I see lots of people now talking about personalized care, right? With the identified population, we can get to a level of engaging AI to look at the data and then predict on what's coming up based on the data, and curing or setting up for better care is another thing that I'm hearing. Got it.
All right, very good. I think, we've been talking a lot about rule engines, and I think I just want to spend a minute to educate those who are not aware of what a rule engine is. And it's basically it's a graphical design tool to take rules out of custom code, like you might see on the left, right, and put it in a graphical user interface to make it easy for subject matter experts to look at the rules, to understand the rules, to edit them and maintain them. I think you'd all agree, if you look at the structure on the right, it's a lot easier to understand what a dosage table looks like or can be maintained versus trying to find it in the code and work with a programmer to update a rule, for example. And in the healthcare space, if you're a um, if you're a provider or you're submitting claims, and there are rule tables for how to make a claim look good such that a specific payer will pay that claim, right? And everybody has different tweaks on how they want things worded, structured in the claim to be paid. And so, thus, you need a lot of rules to if you want to automate your claims process, right? So rules are super heavy in the healthcare space, and this is why you would rather have a rule engine to manage those versus having to change code every time you want to update a rule.
Yeah, and I'll just jump in on that, Gordon, to say that, and if we're using something like AI, machine learning in other settings is different than healthcare. We know that AI is all about, again, probabilities, and in healthcare, we need certainty. So we need to be able to view those rules and understand what AI is suggesting so we can have certainty that we are now prescribing the right medication for the right patient. We have to have that layer of certainty, and something like a rules table, like you just showed, provides a way for AI or someone suggesting the rules to have a user interface that a clinical expert can look at and review before we put those suggestions into action for a particular patient to make sure that we're providing the best care.
Yeah, that's a great point, Beth. And I'd also say combining AI with a rules engine, right? For example, we're working with another insurance company I referenced earlier, and the output of the rules that go into the claim, the actual invoice, for example, there's specific wording. You don't want the AI model creating different text every time it's creating a new invoice for you, right? But if you ask the AI to pick the appropriate rule to provide the right text into the claim, that's a perfect use case where you have specific text, specific claim, specific document, and you're using the rules to generate the output, for example. So the two working hand in hand are better than either independently.
Yeah, and we're talking a lot about operational workflow and administrative workflow, and those are two of the largest areas where AI is being used today in healthcare. IDC is a leading industry analyst. They just came up with a taxonomy, and they said there's 5 categories where AI is being used. And workflow are 3 of those categories: clinical, administrative, and operational workflow. And when we think about workflow, we're managing the rules of where something goes next and what happens next, which is where rules engine works hand in hand with AI really well. Krish, tell us a little bit more about how it works specifically in the claims process.
Yeah. So when it comes to operations, right, claims denial ratio is an important thing, with respect to revenue cycle management, as we are aware. So every provider that we talk to, so how do we reduce the claim rejection? How can we do that? It's a massive manual effort goes in. So that's where we see rules engine shine. Like what Gordon was mentioning, in the sense, like, those days are gone. Manually go and write an if-else condition and make the rules work. Now rules are generated on the fly. We can, with the AI infusion on it, right? And we can use the predictive analytics to kind of understand the pattern, understand the context, and then try to build the rules on the go so that it gets applied on the claims. So that's where we see industry is moving. That's where rules engine really shine and understand the rules that needs to be applied from the denied claims and gets applied on the as an edit or a business rule, which kind of prevents happening next. So thereby reducing the claims denials overall for the provider. So that's where we see rules engine shine with AI and making decisions on the go with the patterns that they see. But
Yeah, and to just follow up on that, Krish, like the another advantage to a rule engine is that it provides an audit trail, right? And when you're trying to understand why something happened, you can always go back and explain which rules were triggered, why the final outcome was this. Whereas this is the big disadvantage of a large language model, right? If you ask it how it came up with the result, it's not going to know, right? It might spew some text at you, but you wouldn't know. So, but you combining the large language model to generate the rules, then you have the rules to run against a claim, right? And you have the audit trail, and you have a clear definition of what rules were triggered, why the outcome was what it was. So again, you're getting the best of both. This might be a good time to actually see something, an example of what how you can combine AI with a rule engine. So, and Tim will present that to us. But before we get there, Krish, maybe you can set the table a bit to explain what we're about to see.
Sure, Gordon. This is one of the scenarios that we keep hearing from our customers that, like I was mentioning before, how do we reduce the claim denials that we see? Obviously from plan standpoint, right, and their claims adjudication engine is also kind of coming up with lots of edits and rules and all that, right, to kind of make sure that there is no fraudulent activity and there is no, putting through the claims twice or thrice and things like that, and making sure that there is no wastage in processing this claim. So this particular situation that what we were looking at is more of how do we reduce the claim denials by using rules engine? And it's not by building the edits manually, but once we submit the claims to the plan, and then once it gets processed, how do we make sense out of the denied data? And then have a tool like a rule decisions as a rules engine, learn the rules and apply those rules for the new submission. That's the cycle that we are talking about. After the denial, how AI learns the whole data and then makes sense out of it and come up with the pattern of these are the top 4, 5, 10 rules that we are seeing that should be in place for the new claim submission, to making sure that we send the claims with the right accuracy with the correct data. So that's what we are talking about. So these are some of the claim denial reasons that has been taken into account to kind of better understand why this is happening, and some of the things that we see some of the things that we see are already taken care by the initial edits. But however, this is a constant learning process for the LLM to better understand and come up with 2 categories. Essentially, this is the end goal that we wanted to achieve on AI suggest and AI correct. AI suggest is more of a less probability or less number of claims falling into that category. And then AI correct is more of like 80 to 90% probability that this business rule should be in place. So the way that the solution kind of we are envisioning is moving towards AI suggest and AI correct, where AI correct eventually gets to the process of learning these adaptive roles and applying it on the go. And then AI suggest is more of routing the claims that has to be manually edited for right billing codes, right taxonomy, and things like that. So that's what we are looking at. So I will, at this point, I'll hand it over to Tim to kind of go through the demo for us. Tim.
All right. Thanks, Krish. All right. I will stop sharing and turn it over to Tim Stahl.
Right. Oh, I know you. So yeah, to build on what we've been talking about today, what you're seeing in front of you here is a system that was actually built on the Decisions platform for looking at just this specific use case. And so in this case, you can see we have a list of claims in front of us here that have been routed through the system to a payer to actually be processed and have that payment remitted to us. Each one of these claims through here has got things like the payer name on it, some very high-level patient data, so we know who they are, what their applicable health coverage is, and then what the data submission is and what status it's in. And for each one of these, there's a set of rules that has been built in Decisions using not only industry best practice, but some AI suggestions that we have gotten along the way as we're continuously improving upon this as the claims are routed through the system. So for each one of these, you'll notice that there's a certain color associated with that particular claim, where red are 75% probability and above that they're going to be denied, right? So we stopped it before it was sent in so someone can review that, take action on it, correct it, and then send that through so we don't have that potential loss of revenue due to something we could have easily rectified before submitting it. The yellow is very similar. Those are a lesser amount of probability between 50 and 75%. So we know that this one's definitely going to be denied, and these ones have a pretty high chance of it. Now, for each of these, if we were to take a look at this second one here, you can see this list on the bottom that's actually showing the rules that were executed on that claim as it was sent through the system, and then the probability of failure should it actually have not passed that particular rule. So this one's very straightforward, right? The insured ID didn't exist. We don't know who they are. If the payer can't tell who it's, which person to bill it to or which insurance to send it to, of course, that's going to be kicked out pretty quickly. And you could keep seeing as we go through these, there are other rules that were fired off. Do they have the applicable health coverage or in the list? Or the date of submission, is it close enough to the current date? All of these are different things that each payer is going to have a potential of having a different subset of information that's required to actually have these, approved or rejected. So the good thing about this,
jumping in here for a moment, Tim, just to give you all like a scale of what some of this looks like. We have a large client that has a business process outsourcing operation in India, and they have teams working on different providers, right? Different healthcare systems, large pharmacies. And even if you think that 90% of claims today get automated and get paid, that 10%, there are literally systems that have 15,000 people working on the things that can't get automated, the rejections, right? Another system might have 10, 11,000 people working on all of these, figuring out why this didn't get paid, right? So there is an awful lot of manual work. I mean, this dashboard that Tim is showing you is sitting in front of thousands of people right now trying to figure out why these claims get paid. So this is huge. There's a number of people doing this manual work today.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's where the power of AI comes in at this point, right? We have our rules, we've sent them through, we have the claims, they process through the system, and we've had some issues where some of these, we know the system is tagged, these are probably going to be rejected. Now, we could read the rule. I could see that, okay, the insured ID doesn't exist, so therefore it is. But when I have this combination here, where should I actually put all of my efforts in to ensuring this, one, gets approved this time, but two, I implement what I need the next time to ensure that this doesn't happen again, or I have a higher chance of catching it as it comes through again. So what we do is something simple in our platform is all these reports and things you're seeing are actionable. So anywhere I have these rows of data like I do here, I could simply right click. And one of the actions that we developed here was a way to rectify the potential errors on that particular claim. Now, what this is going to do is this is actually going to take the rules that were, had that high probability of failure. So the data that wasn't submitted properly, it has the knowledge of all of the rules that we have in our system. It has knowledge of the information that came in from the client that we're sending through. And what we do is we ask the AI model, okay, take a look at all this. And based on these denial codes we have, based on these rules we have in the system, give me an idea of what we need to do to actually rectify this. So this is that suggestion that AI is giving us on how to correct this problem. If we do this, it's going to take just a second to spin because this is the real world. It's actually talking to an AI model here. But we can see that based on the data we have, AI is suggesting that it took one I saw. So for one, we're in agreement here that the insured ID doesn't exist. We need to have a rule there. Or in this case, we actually need to send the insured ID. So pretty straightforward. And here on this system, we could simply enter in their insured ID, which obviously this is real. That's their actual ID number. We could hit submit here, and now that claim has been processed through, and we could see it was approved. Right, so that is great for onesie twosie, right? Here are the claims that went through. Here's why they were denied, and here's how I can fix it. And we can handle that using AI right from this dashboard. But what happens when you have that big batch? So you have those thousands of people sitting there typing through it, right? We want to reduce that overhead. We want to reduce the probability of human error. We want to reduce the probability of denied claims getting through. And this is where this other dashboard comes in that we've built up. Now, here what you're looking at is some KPIs around the claims that are processed through the system, the unrealized revenue that has been denied based on some claims that have been rejected to us, the denial ratio. So we have all this at a glance. Not only some charts here that can show the breakdown of which denial codes or which rejection codes were sent back to us and by which payer. But on the left-hand side here, we have a report of all those claims that were denied. We can see which payer they were. We have them grouped currently by that denial code. And of course, we have various other things in here as well. But, maybe, if we're looking at a list like this, maybe, Krish, is this, when we were talking about that AI correct, is there something that we could use perhaps, to help us out in the future with AI when we're talking about these batches of claims and reducing that burden?
Yeah, exactly. So this is where that AI correct and AI suggest is going to come into play. Based on the probability that we see, depending on the denial reasons. And that's a great opportunity for us to reduce the manual effort, right? So if the volume is high, the probability is high, a couple of times we can have that manual edits in the claim for resubmission. However, this should be an ongoing process where you take that business role and then make it a role for the new submissions. So eventually what we are looking at is AI correct is going to be seamlessly cut down the manual effort that is involved and put through as a business role so that it doesn't happen again. And then AI suggest is something still, the probability is less. And then there is still some validation needs to be done. It's not qualified to be in terms of volume and the probability to be corrected automatically. So those are the things that still will go through the workflow. But eventually what we are seeing is once we gain that confidence level, it's going to go through that the other process of applying it automatically through the rules engine. That's where I think this rules engine is decisions as a rules engine is coming handy to facilitate all of that stuff. Even if they wanted to apply one edit, right, Tim, that we can right click on that and then kind of build that edit on the go also, correct?
Yeah, and I really like that. So like if the square on the right, those inference of the AI model, if those were returned from the AI suggest and AI correct, what I like is that the pairing that AI tool with a rules engine gives a chance for a human to review it so we can make sure that we want to adopt that new rule. Tim, can you show us how that would work?
Absolutely. To your point, the model has inferred these potential issues, but we can take it that one step further where, in the system, we built an action here where I can review this. And what this is going to do is the AI model is going to say, based on rules that I've seen, based on the data you have, and based on the probability of this being denied, here are some potential rules that can be added to that payer that then you could use to catch this in the future, right? And these rules, we're not looking at code like you saw in a couple slides ago. We had that code and we had that rule next to it. If we were interested in actually looking at this rule and seeing what it is, this is where the power of a rules engine comes in, because I'm not looking at code. My simple statement rule, or my if then else logic, simply says that if the applicable health coverage is in this particular list, then we know this is going to be approved because that's the set of rules that are set up at that payer to approve those types of claims. And if not, we can give it a percentage that can be used as a score and aggregate it so we can see on a batch process basis what's the probability that this is going to be denied in the future. And we can continue to tweak this along the way.
Yeah, I know on the clinical side, if you stay on that statement rule for a second, Tim, that we're really working to automate clinical workflows and have a view that a clinician, a subject matter expert, could look at something like this to say, oh yeah, that's right, and I can read this. And so we are bridging that gap between a clinical subject matter expert and someone who is writing the code in the background to make it easier for clinical workflows. But Krish, the question for you is, when we're thinking about claims management and workflows like we're discussing here, who would you think would be helping to edit those and maintain those rules for most of customers using a product like this?
Yeah, so it depends on a couple of reasons based on the maturity of the solution, right? So obviously, the folks who are going to be like submitting the claims, operation standpoint, they would have to look at it, and then they would have to bless that. Okay, this is like you were saying, right? This is we are sure that this edit has to be applied. So the good thing about the entire tool here is we don't need an IT folk like to take this business role and then build it and then go through the whole STLC cycle. It can be one click of the button, right? Once we get an approval, once we get the blessing, then it can be it can business even can apply this role. When the way that we build the workflow, once they submit it, it gets applied behind the screen. So that's the way I'm looking at how these rules can be applied behind the screens. Tim, anything you want to share on that as well?
I'll jump in here for a minute. We went live a couple months ago, just maybe 2 months, with a different insurance provider, and they're or rather they're a service company sitting between the payers and the providers, right? We went live with a similar model, and immediately within the first week or two, we were at 70% automation of these claims. Within, I think, about 4 weeks, they were at 92. So you can see that with the iteration and the AI recommending what it can be, you implement it as a rule, all of a sudden, your automation percentage goes up and the manual work goes down dramatically. So we're at a really fascinating time to combine the power and strength of these LLMs with traditional software tools such as a rule engine, a workflow automation. And there might be, I was just reading some questions, which we'll get to more of in a moment, but there was one related to, okay, first off, I'll say always this question comes up, right? What about privacy and data? And I want to say up front, service providers like Microsoft, like Azure, have HIPAA compliant environments where they've got all of the HIPAA compliancy built in to their Azure stack, and I'm sure AWS, Google have similar services. So all the big providers of these tools know how important this is, and they've set up HIPAA compliant implementations of these tools. So,
and on top of that, Gordon, from the AI perspective, and maybe Krish, you can comment on this, we would train train the models off of a particular customer's data, so that customer's data is not shared with any other data. We're not sending this to general ChatGPT in the cloud for everyone to see. Yeah, Krish, you want to comment on that a little bit too?
Yeah, exactly. So, so let me first touch upon Gordon's point, right? These days, any major players that you take in the cloud servicing, right? They are SOC 2 compliance, FedRAMP compliant, HIPAA compliant. So from data security standpoint, there is this fundamental groundwork that has been already done. And obviously, there is always concerns about using these LLMs and governing the bias and things like that. Definitely, that is something that has to be looked at. It from data perspective, like you were saying, like the same kind of concern came up when when the whole industry was moving towards multi-tenant application. Like, what happens if I put the data? We have multi-tenant, operating in the same environment. So definitely, data security concerns are there. We need to kind of address it based on the client requirements and how this can be governed for the specific client, for the specific scenario.
Yeah, thanks, Krish. And while we're at it, I think there's another good question came in here. The question is Decisions replacing, a billing software or a clearinghouse edit, or can it be integrated to a billing software and pull back end data and interact through API? And that's a great question, because it's really the latter, right? Where Decisions, as I mentioned earlier, where we really sit is between the cracks. So we're not going to replace an entire billing system. but rather integrate with the billing system, integrate with some data, integrate with the large language model to do the orchestration of this. Because sometimes you pull data, you might have to format it in a certain way to send somewhere else. That's what Decisions is great at. Then we send an API message, we get the response, we may have to format it and then integrate it into your billing system, for example. So that's the power and the strength of Decisions. It's not to replace these other software applications, but rather to make them work better and to enhance it such that it can be automated to a larger degree.
Right. And to add to what you said, Gordon, again, this is like you said, we are not replacing any clearinghouse, but clearinghouse always helps in capturing some of these edits when we put through the claims. But this is more of taking a holistic view or helping a health system to, working with multiple plans and trying to see, what edits that they can build to avoid subsequent claim submission. So definitely, it's not.
Yeah, and I'll also shout out to Krish and the CitiusTech team in that this is what they do. These guys understand this tech, all the different tech space, the tech stacks. They have subject matter experts that understand the process to help implement tools like this for automation. So by all means, if you have something and you're looking to automate it, reach out to Decisions, reach out to CitiusTech. We work together on these kinds of problems, and it takes all of it. It takes the software tools, but it takes people who understand the process and understand all of these other different tech stacks. And the Citius team have experts in all these areas.
Yep.
A couple more questions. One question that come out again relates to the hallucinations of LLMs, right? And it's spot on. I talked about this retrieval augmented generation, or RAG, and it's a way to utilize the LLMs to do something, but restrict it to a specific document. So, for example, you might be asking, "What's the patient ID on this document?" And so you're asking the large language model in English this question, and is specifically looking at that one document. So that's the power of this. And I think in the early areas of automation, that's where we found the absolute best results. In fact, at Decisions, we are automating invoices that our suppliers send to us, and doing just this, where we give all of our suppliers our email address, invoices@decisions.com. They send them. We use our own platform to pull out the invoices. We use services from Google, from OpenAI to extract text from these documents, and then ask it questions. Okay, here's our supplier list. Which one of these suppliers is this from, right? So we have lists, we have rules, we're combining services. And that's the magic of this, is that there's no one tool that solves everything, but by combining all of these various services and integrating and orchestrating together, you can achieve a level of automation that wasn't even possible a year or 2 years ago. Let's see if we have any questions. I guess we'll end with a if you were to look ahead, Beth, over the next 5 years, what do you see happening in this space in healthcare? I know that's a big ask, but
Well, I can say some of the things that I hope for. And one of the reasons I moved from clinical care, taking care of one patient at a time, into the world of IT and informatics is because I believe in that power of collecting data about individual patients. So I'm collecting information about each patient, then aggregating that data to the population level, analyzing the data at the population level, and then bringing that back to provide the best care for each individual patient. And Krish talked about this with both kind of the population health focus that the US healthcare system is moving towards, but also this personalized healthcare, a little different than precision healthcare, where we're talking about the specific right cancer drug for someone with a specific genome. I'm talking about personalized healthcare. What care is the best for me, Beth Meyers, when I have a conversation with my doctor, and what's the best care that's recommended by all of that data for someone who has my same age, my same gender, my same situation in life, and where now I have the best suggestions from all of that data. And as a patient, I can have a conversation with my doctor to decide, based off of all this best data, should I have surgery or not? What should my next goals for my health be? How should I change my diet or my exercise to improve my longevity? There's not enough good data out there to answer those questions for me, particularly today. And I hope when we go 5 to 10 years in the future, we're able to leverage AI to clean up that data so we can answer questions like that. That's my goal for healthcare. A little bit lofty, might take us more than 5 years. Since the last time I went to the doctor, they still ask me to fill out a paper form.
Krish, yourself, any thoughts on the world ahead?
Yeah, so Beth touched upon the digital twins, right? So that's where I was, being optimistic about. We see all of this data available, right? How can we get to more of patient engagement and at the same time personalized care? That if we combine those two elements, I think we can get ahead of the game and then get the patient more engaged into their specific treatments and follow-ups on any chronic disease, and making sure that they adhere to their schedule of going through their diagnosis and things like that. That's where I see more of personalized care, back to what Beth said, and also more patient engagement coming in. And also we can, at some point in time, I'm hoping that we'll have enough data to model it, with the data for a specific patient, and predict that, this patient, at an earlier stage, should do things differently in order to land up there. So that kind of predictive analysis with that large amount of data that is getting built up is what I'm hoping in the next 5-10 years that we'll be marching towards.
All right. Thanks, Krish. I think we're almost at the hour. What I'll ask everyone is, if you want to learn more about the Decisions platform, please reach out, sales@decisions.com. We'd be happy to show you how all this works. All of the webinars can be found on our website, decisions.com/events. On a final note, I will plug a book. There's a AI researcher. Her name is Fei Li. She's a Chinese American origin, and the book is The Worlds I See. And there's a strong healthcare component through that, but she's a Stanford PhD. She's worked at Google for a while. She's working on AI in healthcare. She was behind the ImageNet. And I just completed the audiobook a week or two ago. Fascinating. Every other chapter is her life story, interspersed with advancements in AI, and again, a strong healthcare component. So if you're in this space and want to learn what's coming and how it all came about, a fascinating book. So on that note, again, this will be posted to our website in digital form, and we look forward to talking to you all soon. And I want to thank again our co-hosts, Beth, Tim, and Krish. Thanks for joining us today. It's been a pleasure.
It's a pleasure.
Thanks, Gordon.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, everyone.